What unfolds when one of Hollywood's most recognizable actors arrives for what is supposed to be a standard promotional appearance, only to discover that the host intends to steer the conversation anywhere but toward his latest project. The atmosphere inside the studio was thick with unease as Brad Pitt took his seat behind the familiar curved desk on The View, anticipating the usual easygoing discussion about his new film. Instead, the exchange veered sharply off course almost immediately. The program had just come back from a commercial break when Joy Behar, positioned at the end of the panel, began what felt less like a question and more like a calculated confrontation. While the other co-hosts greeted their high-profile guest with friendly smiles, Behar's face remained stern and unyielding. "So, Brad," she started, her tone carrying a sharpness that instantly altered the mood in the room. "Before we get into your movie, I think we should address the obvious issue." Pitt appeared momentarily surprised but worked to keep his composure, though his confident grin wavered slightly. "I'm sorry. What issue are you referring to, Joy?" he replied evenly. "Oh, please," Behar shot back, leaning forward with intensity. "You're here promoting another film where you play the hero, the man audiences are meant to admire. Yet in your personal life, there's been a pattern of fractured relationships and disappointed people. How do you square that?" The rest of the panel exchanged uneasy looks. Whoopi Goldberg attempted to gently interrupt, suggesting they pivot back to the film, but Behar cut her off without breaking eye contact with Pitt. She insisted the matter was important, arguing that viewers deserved candor rather than a polished publicity performance. Pitt inhaled slowly, the tension visible in the tightening of his jaw. "Joy, I came here to talk about the film and the incredible team I worked with," he said carefully. "I'm not sure what personal matters you believe need to be dissected on daytime television." "Personal matters?" Behar responded with exaggerated disbelief. "Like the way every relationship you've had becomes tabloid drama. Like the contrast between the sensitive, artistic persona you project and the behavior reported behind the scenes." A murmur rippled through the audience. This was not the light celebrity chat they had anticipated. Pitt's voice remained steady, though there was a new firmness beneath it. "I think you're repeating someone else's narrative," he replied. "I've acknowledged my mistakes publicly. I've spoken about growth and accountability. I've never claimed to be flawless." Behar scoffed at that. "How convenient. The growth argument. Do you realize how dismissive that sounds to those who may have been hurt? Framing everything as part of your journey doesn't erase consequences." Sonny Hostin tried to redirect, mentioning Pitt's philanthropic efforts and the charitable initiatives tied to his foundation. But Behar interjected again, her tone laced with skepticism. She implied that such efforts were little more than carefully timed public relations moves that conveniently aligned with film releases. The crowd began shifting in their seats, some offering audible support for Pitt. The cameras caught his hands gripping the desk, his knuckles paling under pressure. "Joy," he said in a controlled, low voice, "I'm trying to understand what's happening. Did I personally offend you? Because this feels less like an interview and more like a targeted attack." "An attack?" Behar replied with a tight laugh. "I'm asking the questions real journalists should ask instead of flattering you because you're attractive and famous. Someone has to hold you responsible." "Responsible for what?" Pitt countered, his voice rising slightly. "For being human, for making mistakes and learning from them, for dedicating my career to meaningful storytelling, for using your charm and image to glide through life while leaving chaos behind." Behar answered without hesitation. "For assuming that a few acclaimed films and some charitable donations cancel out a repeated pattern of behavior." The other host sat quietly, stunned by the escalating tension. Pitt leaned back, studying her with disbelief mixed with simmering frustration. "You know what's remarkable, Joy?" he said, his tone turning cold and deliberate. "You sit here daily passing judgment on people, tearing them down as though you occupy some moral high ground. What grants you that authority? What have you built besides a career centered on criticism?" The studio fell into near silence, broken only by the faint hum of production equipment. Behar's expression hardened as the dynamic shifted. "Excuse me," she snapped. "I've worked in this industry longer than you've been a household name. I've earned the right to ask difficult questions." "Difficult questions?" Pitt rose from his chair, standing tall behind the desk. "These aren't difficult questions. They're personal attacks disguised as journalism. There's a distinction. And honestly, I expected more from someone with your experience." "Sit down," Behar ordered, pointing sharply toward his seat. "You don't get to intimidate this panel because you're uncomfortable being challenged." "Intimidate?" Pitt remained on his feet, incredulous. The words seemed to hang between them as the charged silence deepened, the clash no longer about a movie but about accountability, perception, and the fine line between scrutiny and hostility. "I'm on my feet because I'm thinking about leaving?" Pitt said, his voice tight with restraint. "This doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels like a trial, and I didn't agree to sit here as your target while you sort through whatever frustrations you have." The air in the studio felt charged, as if a single spark might set everything off. Host and guest were locked in an unblinking stare that seemed to paralyze the rest of the panel. Seconds dragged by heavily before Whoopi Goldberg finally stepped in, urging everyone to pause and breathe. Her attempt at calm barely made a dent in the standoff. Joy Behar refused to retreat. "If you want to walk out, then do it," she shot back. "That's what you do when things get uncomfortable, isn't it? When someone pushes back or questions you, you step away." Pitt slowly eased himself back into his seat, though his shoulders stayed tense and upright. "You know something, Joy? I do remove myself from unhealthy environments," he replied evenly. "I've learned that investing energy in constant conflict doesn't serve anyone, but I'm staying put because people watching deserve to see how this is unfolding." "What's unfolding?" Behar countered sharply. "Is that for once, someone isn't praising you, and you don't like it?" "That's not it," Pitt responded, his voice growing firmer. "What's happening is that you're using this stage to air what feels like a personal grudge against me. Or maybe against men who fit a certain mold. This isn't reporting. It's something else entirely, and I'm not here to play counselor." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few clapped in encouragement while others remained still, unsure of how to react. Sarah Haynes tried to steer the focus back to the film, mentioning its striking visuals and the artistry behind it, but Behar dismissed the effort with a wave of her hand. "We're finally having a genuine exchange instead of the usual promotional fluff," she insisted. Turning back to Pitt, she pressed further. "Do you believe your status and appearance have shielded you from consequences that ordinary people would face?" He regarded her steadily before answering. "I believe my public profile has made me an easy mark for commentary and speculation," he said. "Every misstep becomes spectacle. Every rumor turns into entertainment, and sometimes it gives people an outlet to project their own dissatisfaction." "Dissatisfaction," Behar repeated, her tone climbing. "So now I'm dissatisfied." "I didn't say that," Pitt replied calmly, "but I've never claimed to be a victim. I've acknowledged my faults. I've worked to grow. I've tried to contribute positively where I can. That's more than I can say for endless criticism without context." The other co-hosts looked increasingly uneasy as the exchange intensified. Alyssa Farah Griffin attempted another pivot, suggesting viewers might be interested in hearing about Pitt's production company and the kinds of narratives he champions. "His production company," Behar said with a sharp laugh. "You mean another vanity platform? A way to control the story and surround himself with agreement?" That comment visibly struck a chord. Pitt's eyes sharpened. "My company has produced films that address complex social themes," he replied. "Projects that amplify voices often overlooked and challenge audiences to reflect. What does this program accomplish besides amplifying controversy?" "We inform viewers," Behar snapped. "We ask hard questions and confront influential figures." "Confront?" Pitt rose again, leaning forward slightly. "For the past quarter hour, you've relied on rumors and assumptions. You haven't explored the craft of filmmaking, the collaboration involved, or any meaningful topic that might enlighten the audience. Instead, you've reduced this to personal insinuations." "My purpose is honesty," Behar declared. "It's ensuring that celebrities don't hide behind polished images and handlers." "Your purpose is attention," Pitt responded without missing a beat. "Conflict attracts viewers. You've turned what should have been a discussion about storytelling into spectacle." The audience was now clearly divided, some voicing approval for Pitt's stance while others sat in uneasy silence. Cameras captured every raised eyebrow and tightened jaw, the tension unmistakable. "You want to talk about honesty?" Pitt continued, his voice lifting. "Here's honesty. I showed up prepared to discuss a project I care deeply about, a film shaped by countless dedicated people. Instead, I've been met with a barrage of insinuations that feel more like character attacks than inquiry." "Character attacks?" Behar exclaimed, nearly shouting. "Yes," he replied firmly. "You've framed every question to suggest guilt or duplicity. That's not curiosity, that's presumption." She leaned forward again, refusing to yield. "Maybe you're simply unused to scrutiny that isn't flattering." "I've faced scrutiny my entire career," Pitt answered. "Public life comes with it. But there's a line between thoughtful questioning and relentless antagonism. One invites dialogue, the other shuts it down." Goldberg tried again to diffuse the situation, suggesting they reset and refocus on the creative process behind the film. The suggestion hung in the air, uncertain whether either party would accept the olive branch. Pitt remained standing for a moment longer before straightening fully. His expression carried both frustration and resolve. The room was thick with expectation. Every eye trained on the confrontation that had transformed a routine appearance into an unexpectedly heated clash. The only problem I have, Behar declared sharply, is with privileged celebrities who believe they can glide through life on charisma alone and never answer for what they've done. And what exactly have I done? Pitt shot back, frustration no longer hidden. Spell it out. What are you holding me responsible for? My divorce, my battles with alcohol, my efforts to become a better father and a better man? I've addressed those chapters publicly. I've admitted my faults. What more are you asking for? I'm asking for sincerity. Behar replied, though her tone had grown high and strained. I want you to stop presenting yourself as some enlightened figure who's grown beyond his past when the pattern suggests something else. Pattern. Pitt let out a short, humorless laugh. Joy, you don't know my life. You don't know any supposed pattern. You know headlines, gossip columns, and anonymous sources. You're constructing a narrative about me from speculation. Whoopi Goldberg attempted once again to regain control, suggesting they cut to a commercial and reset. Pitt lifted his hand, signaling he wasn't finished. No, let's not step away, he said firmly. You want this discussion, Joy, then let's continue. But let's acknowledge what it really is. This isn't about truth or responsibility. This is about a host choosing to use her position to target a guest based on personal resentment, rather than professional inquiry. The cameras continued rolling as the atmosphere thickened. The tension in the studio was almost tangible, and Behar's face flushed with anger. Personal resentment, she repeated incredulously. You think this is personal? This is about ensuring influential men don't escape consequences just because they're wealthy and charming. There it is. Pitt replied, gesturing toward her. This isn't about me at all. It's about some broader frustration you're carrying. Maybe someone in your own life hurt you. Maybe someone avoided accountability, and I'm the convenient stand-in sitting across from you. The accusation struck hard. Behar's jaw dropped briefly before her expression hardened. How dare you analyze me like that? She snapped. How dare you redirect this and make it about my life when you're the one bristling at tough questions? Tell questions. Pitt's voice rose in response. You haven't asked about my craft, my film, my creative process, or anything of substance. For nearly 20 minutes you've delivered personal criticisms rooted in rumor. That's not journalism. That's a grudge. Sarah Haynes tried again to pivot, praising the performances in Pitt's latest project. Behar cut her off impatiently. Stop trying to rescue him. This is the problem. Everyone always shields Brad Pitt. There's always someone ready to soften the blow. Or maybe. Pitt responded, his tone suddenly calm but cutting. People recognize when criticism crosses into hostility. Maybe they understand the difference between legitimate accountability and thinly veiled antagonism. People like me. Behar demanded, her voice climbing. What does that imply? Women who refuse to be dazzled by a movie star's smile. People who see through the facade. It means individuals who use their authority to intimidate. Pitt replied evenly. It means hiding behind the title of journalist while projecting unresolved frustrations onto guests. It means fostering a confrontational environment and acting surprised when someone refuses to accept it quietly. The audience was fully absorbed now, the divide unmistakable. Some called out encouragement for Pitt, while others watched in stunned silence at the intensity of the exchange. Alyssa Farah Griffin attempted to remind everyone that they were broadcasting live. Exactly, Behar interjected quickly. We're alive and viewers can witness the authentic Brad Pitt, not the carefully packaged public version. They can see how he reacts when someone challenges him instead of praising him. The authentic Brad Pitt? He repeated, leaning forward once more, his gaze unwavering. You want authenticity? Here it is. I came here ready to discuss storytelling, collaboration, and the passion that goes into making something meaningful. But I'm also someone who won't sit quietly while being subjected to personal accusations framed as insight. My accusations are about accountability. Behar insisted loudly. I don't have some hidden issue. I have a problem with powerful men who believe they're untouchable. I've never claimed to be untouchable. Pitt answered, his voice steady despite the heat in the room. I've acknowledged mistakes. I've spoken about regret. I've sought help when I needed it. I've tried to grow. If that's not accountability, what is? Behar shook her head, unconvinced. Growth isn't a public relations strategy, it's consistent behavior. And you're determining consistency based on headlines. Pitt countered. You're reducing a complicated human life to bullet points from tabloids. That's not a fair measure of anyone. The back and forth had reached a point where neither seemed willing to yield. The studio lights felt harsher, the silence between remarks heavier. You can't expect people not to question you. Behar pressed. You've benefited enormously from your image. I expect questions. Pitt replied. What I don't expect is a platform designed for discussion to become a venue for personal condemnation without evidence or context. The audience murmured again, sensing the confrontation had shifted beyond a disagreement into something symbolic, two opposing ideas about fame, responsibility, and the role of media clashing in real time. Pitt straightened in his seat, his tone measured but intense. If you want a real conversation, we can have one about accountability, about personal growth, about how public figures navigate mistakes under constant scrutiny. But reducing it to accusations about my character based on rumor does nothing constructive. Behar crossed her arms, her expression firm. The divide between them was no longer just personal, it represented conflicting views about power and perception. The studio remained electric as the confrontation continued to unfold in front of millions watching at home. Standards, Pitt repeated, a sharp, bitter laugh escaping him. That's what you call standards. He leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on Behar. Your standards include ambushing a guest with personal attacks. Your standards involve forming conclusions about someone's life based on tabloid gossip. Your standards turn what should be a professional discussion into a public therapy session for your own unresolved issues. Whoopi Goldberg rose from her chair, trying to insert herself between them. Okay, both of you need to dial it back a bit. We're going to commercial right now? No, Whoopi, Pitt said firmly, not averting his gaze. Joy started this. We're going to finish it. You want to talk about accountability? He continued. Then let's talk about yours. You've used this platform to launch personal attacks based on nothing more than assumptions and prejudices. What accountability do you take for that? Behar's voice rose sharply. My accountability is to my viewers. To make sure they understand who they're supporting when they watch your films. My responsibility is to avoid being another sycophantic interviewer asking about workouts or favorite restaurants. You haven't asked a single substantial question, Pitt countered. Nothing about the themes in my work, the social issues I care about, the messages we're trying to convey. You've just delivered personal attacks and called it journalism. Because character matters, Behar insisted. Who you are affects every project you touch, every person you work with. And you've decided who I am based on what? Pitt asked. Based on gossip, tabloid headlines, preconceived notions about men in Hollywood, repeated behaviors that show who someone truly is when cameras aren't rolling, she said coldly. What repeated behaviors? Pitt's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. Be specific. I've been open about my struggles, my mistakes, my attempts to grow as a person, he said. I've been transparent about my flaws and my journey to address them. What more could anyone ask? You act as if acknowledging mistakes makes them disappear. Behar snapped. You behave like some enlightened, evolved figure when your actions suggest otherwise. Actions. Pitt stood one last time, his patience exhausted. Joy, you don't know my actions. You don't know how I treat my colleagues, how I manage responsibilities, how I work to repair relationships. You're judging based on gossip and projecting your own biases onto me. There you go again, psychoanalyzing me? Behar shot back. Anything to dodge real responsibility. Real responsibility, Pitt said, his voice filling the studio, is using your platform to highlight meaningful stories instead of tearing people down. It's asking questions that inform, not satisfy a craving for drama. It's treating guests with basic human decency, regardless of personal feelings. The other hosts remained frozen, the audience captivated by the rare intensity of the confrontation. Don't lecture me about responsibility. Behar fired back. I've held powerful people accountable for decades while you've spent your life pretending to be someone else for entertainment. There it is, Pitt said, his voice suddenly calm. You don't respect what I do. You don't think acting, filmmaking, storytelling, any of it, matters. You believe it's all just playing dress up. That's what this has been about from the start. For the first time since the clash began, Behar appeared momentarily speechless. Pitt seized the moment. I came here to discuss a film that addresses serious issues, explores social challenges, and encourages people to think and feel differently. But you've made it clear none of that matters to you. You don't get to decide when we're done. Behar snapped, though her voice lacked its earlier certainty. I do, Pitt replied, removing his microphone. This is an interview, not an interrogation. I won't sit here as your verbal punching bag while you work through personal issues. To the audience here and at home, I apologize that you had to witness this. This isn't what I came for, and it isn't what you tuned in to see. As he turned to leave, Behar shouted after him. Run away, Brad, that's what you do best. Pitt stopped, turned slowly, and spoke with devastating calm. No, Joy. What I do best is tell stories that matter, work with people who inspire me, and try to make a positive difference. What you do best is exactly what you've done here today. The studio fell silent as Pitt walked off the set, leaving Behar sitting at the desk, mouth agape, finally speechless after the most explosive confrontation in the show's history. The tension lingered in the emptying room, an unspoken reminder of the clash between fame, responsibility, and the power of the microphone.